This is Buckout Road. It connects White Plains to West Harrison, New York. This particular stretch is home to some of the country's most infamous urban legends. Buckout Road is the most haunted road in America.
We are talking The Curse of Buckout Road, also known as Buckout Road, The Devil's Path. This one is directed by Matthew Curry Holmes, who also co-wrote this. And you have a few recognisable names here. Danny Glover and Colm Feore, probably the most recognisable names. You've also got Henry Kesme and a small role from David Hayter, actually. The main kind of characters there are played by Evan Ross and Dominique Provost-Chalkley. That's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Anyway, so the story here apparently is based on this urban legend of this particular road, Buckout Road, which according to this movie is the most haunted road in America. I have seen a couple of other movies that claim the same thing. I recently reviewed one called Mount Misery Road, which said exactly the same thing. So who knows what the actual real legends are with these sort of things. Anyway, regardless, it mainly focuses on this kind of young guy who is a former soldier, comes home to stay with his grandfather, played by Danny Glover, and he's kind of sort of strikes up a friendship with this young girl who happens to be the daughter of the police chief, and they discover that there may well be some supernatural shenanigans going on this Buckout Road, and them along with two other guys may well have been cursed. And they keep having visions, they're sleepwalking, they're kind of seeing weird things, and they feel that they may be heading to their own death, as there appears to have been a number of deaths kind of all to do with that kind of the Buckout Road to begin with. And as the movie progresses, there may be well some twists and turns, some paranormal goings on and that sort of thing. And what will happen? Well, you just have to watch the movie to find out. So let's start with what works, first of all, with this movie. This film has its fingers in many pies. So it starts off really as kind of Danny Glover as the kind of the main character initially, and it starts off as a kind of like almost like a procedural mystery, finding out maybe clues of what's going on, interviewing, looking at the evidence, that type of thing. And so it starts off a bit like a supernatural drama, but then we've got all these other things that are kind of going on, including kind of like witchcraft, devil worship, 70s slasher grindhouse kind of sections. All sorts of stuff going on here. The lady in white, ghosts. It's pretty much got everything on there and more. So fairly although it's kind of all based on a small sort of area, the actual story kind of goes in kind of quite a few kind of twists and turns. So I feel the script is quite ambitious, and like I've said, it lends itself to a few kind of surprises along the way. I've got to say, I thought the acting was pretty good. I think everyone, because you've got a few kind of recognisable names here in supporting roles, and I've got to say, they did a pretty good job. And some of these roles are a little bit more fleshed out rather than the kind of your standard. They've had a named actor on set for one day and then filmed a few scenes. Like Danny Glover is in a reasonable amount, certainly within the kind of the beginning of the movie, and has a fairly kind of pivotal role. And the police chief as well, a character actor he would have seen in many things, again, pivotal role. So I thought the acting from the kind of the established actors was pretty good, and even our young cast here did pretty well. Our main protagonist, this young guy, he actually has some kind of quite somewhat genuine and funny reactions to things in regards to how he reacts, and I actually found it quite endearing. And I quite like the way he kind of just reacted to things and stuff like that. It almost seems quite like how you would really react to certain stimuli, basically. I thought was quite good. The effects work is handled fairly well. There's minimal effects, to be honest with you, but I feel there's one pretty decent effect kind of towards the end. One kind of sequence I think was pretty effective here. And the world, the story kind of lends itself to a larger mythology, and you feel like you want to know more about this kind of like this situation, and kind of maybe see it in a sequel, which I think means that kind of the story has done a relatively kind of good job in kind of keeping you engaged. What doesn't work, the second act. is my main critique with this movie. The second act seriously drags. The setup's pretty good. I mean, we have quite a lot of our kind of established actors. Danny Glover, the guy who plays the kind of the police captain and all of that, and the kind of introduction to the kind of the younger cast. And the setup is all good, but the second act seriously drags. Unfortunately, so there is they needed a little bit more happening, I feel, in the kind of the second act, because there just wasn't enough going on, and it just kind of like slowed to a bit of a halt at times. We do have a couple of kind of dream sequences, and this is where we get our weird 70s kind of flashback sequence, which I don't know if it was entirely effective, if I'm honest. It's obviously done as a kind of a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek homage to kind of slasher movies of the kind of the you know, the early 80s, late 70s, that sort of thing. I don't think it was entirely successful, to be honest with you. I think it maybe looked a little bit too silly at times with the fake moustaches and stuff, but I maybe wouldn't have gone with that. And just like the bit of overuse of kind of like grainy footage, things like that. I don't know if it worked particularly well, but I've got to say the latter act of this movie does kind of pick up again. But I do feel there was some plot holes even with that. And I don't want to give too many plot points away necessarily, but there are a few things here that kind of didn't kind of like ring quite true. There's a time jump, and like everyone kind of looks the same. Their hair is exactly the same, things like that. But there's a few little elements here that I felt weren't particularly kind of thought through quite enough. And the movie does have a little bit of a cheap feel. There's a decent effects kind of section towards the end, like I've mentioned. However, there are kind of some other kind of like strange choices throughout the movie. We get a kind of like a montage of people killing themselves, which looks like it's been archive footage from other movies. I don't know if it is, but it just kind of looks like they've just taken. I don't think it is, to be honest, but it just looks like it is. But yeah, it just kind of like some cheaper sort of sequences and stuff like that, and it just has a little bit of a kind of a low budget film. But again, particularly in that kind of that middle section where I feel it's just treading water to kind of run out the kind of the running time a little bit. But overall, I got to say, I found this movie quite intriguing. I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. I think so overall, I actually give it a slightly above average mark. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Because I do think it's actually worth watching. The plot is quite intriguing. I feel the ending is not particularly well thought out, however. So the ending may leave you thinking a little cold. I understand what it was trying to do. I don't think it was particularly successful, however. But nonetheless, I still feel there's enough here to enjoy for a somewhat of a twisty supernatural movie that does have a lot of kind of little kind of things that go for it. 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to it next time. Bye for now.